The executive of Bolivia reaffirmed that the constitutional order has been reestablished after they defeated a coup attempt on Wednesday, although they remain on alert. In Iran on Thursday from 8 a.m. local time, the electoral silence is ruling as the period of reflection begins ahead of the early presidential elections that will be held on Friday. And the United Nations organization assures that the planet is facing alarming rates of violence against children in conflicts. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. After a strong popular rally and the steadfastness of the plurinational government of Bolivia neutralized the coup, the executive reaffirms that the constitutional order has been reestablished in the country, although they remain on alert. On an extensive press conference, the Minister of the Presidency, Marianela Parada, alongside the entire cabinet, unfolded some additional details to those provided by the Minister of Defense about the failed coup attempt on Wednesday. Parada assured that the investigations continue and revealed that they have knowledge thanks to statements from the military coup perpetrators of previous meetings held 2 weeks ago. The incidents registered on Wednesday coincided with the summoning made by the Plurinational Senate to the U.S. representative in Bolivia, Deborah Hevia. And shortly after the Bolivian government reported the failed coup attempt against President Luis Arce, Army and Navy commanders were arrested and presented as the highest-ranking officers behind Wednesday's rebellion. General Juan José Zúñiga, former commander of the Bolivian Army, and Vice Admiral Juan Arne Salvador, former commander of the Bolivian Navy, were escorted by police officers. On Wednesday, June 26, armored vehicles from the Bolivian Army stormed the gates of the government palace led by General Juan José Zúñiga. The general did not explicitly say he was leading a coup, but in the palace stated that the army was trying to, quote-unquote, restore democracy and free political prisoners. President Luis Arce confronted the general commander of the army in the palace hallway, vowing to stand firm, and named a new army commander who ordered troops to stand down. And the Minister of Government of Bolivia, Eduardo del Castillo, said the government would seek to charge the 2 detainees with armed uprising, attempt against the country, and destruction of public property.
We should say that we are investigating crimes against the state's interior security. This is precisely the task of the Interior Ministry, to grant the security of the country. This is why we are making all efforts for these people to be processed for an armed uprising attempt against the country and destruction of public property, and a series of other crimes that we will request to be incorporated to the investigation. Mr. Zúñiga's, Mr. Arnés, and the rest of the people who planned the attempted coup against our country have lost all their credibility. No one believes that what they were doing, not the media nor the people believe, was that they were trying to achieve popular support.
Now let's review some of the main reactions regarding this event. The former president of Bolivia, Evo Morales, called for a national mobilization in defense of democracy and in rejection of the recent attempted coup d'etat against President Luis Arce. Through a post on social network X, the former Bolivian president Evo Morales said, "We call for a national mobilization to defend democracy against the coup d'etat that is being brewed at the head of General Zúñiga. We declare an indefinite general strike and road blockade. We will not allow the armed forces to violate democracy and intimidate the people." In turn, the former Bolivian president in another post said, "We denounce that a group of the Chalapata Special Regiment, Méndez Arcos, took over Plaza Murillo with snipers. This seems to indicate that they perpetrated the coup d'etat in advance. I ask the people with a democratic vocation to defend the homeland from some military groups that act against democracy and the people." For his part, the Vice President of Bolivia, David Choquehuanca, also denounced before the international community the attempted coup d'etat that was brewing in the country against the government of Luis Arce. Through a post on social network X, the Bolivian Vice President said, "We denounce to the international community that in Bolivia there is a coup d'etat against our democratically elected government." And for his part, Venezuela's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ivan Gil, published on social network X a statement from his government where it denounces and rejects in the most energetic way the reckless attempted coup d'etat against the elected government of the plurinational state of Bolivia, chaired by Luis Arce Catacora, executed by some traitor military units in La Paz on the date of June 26. It also called on the international community and the members of the Community of Latin America and Caribbean Countries, CELAC, to mobilize in favor of Bolivian democracy. The document expressed Venezuela's absolute support for the Bolivian people and President Luis Arce. And the president-elect of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, also condemned the attempted military coup in Bolivia and offered the unconditional support of the Mexican government. Through a publication in social network X, the president-elect Claudia Sheinbaum expressed that the uprising of some units of the Bolivian armed forces is an attack against democracy. We strongly condemn these events. Our unconditional support to President Luis Arce and his people. Our support for the position of the government of Mexico. And the president of Honduras, Xiomara Castro, also reacted to the attempted coup d'etat in Bolivia. Also on her X account, Xiomara Castro said, "I urgently call on the presidents of the member countries of CELAC to condemn the fascism that today attacks democracy in Bolivia and demand full respect for civil powers and the Constitution. The military forces have once again carried out a criminal coup d'etat. We express our unconditional support to the brother people of Bolivia, to the President Luis Alberto Arce and Evo Morales." Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In celebration of the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and Venezuela and the Youth Day, the Allied Network CGTN in Spanish interviewed one of the authors of the book China and Venezuela Towards a Shared Future, Meng Yangyun, director of the Center of Hispanic American Studies at the University of Foreign Affairs of China. Let's see.
Hola a todos, soy Meng Xiayun.
Hi everyone, I am Meng Yangyun, professor at the University of Foreign Affairs of China, and now director of the Center for Hispanic American Studies at our university. It has actually been a whole year since the publication of this book, China and Venezuela Toward a Shared Future. And for my part, I am contributing with an article entitled Building a New Mechanism of Cultural and People-to-People Network Exchanges Between China and Latin America. It is not so easy to collect so many articles among so many authors from different countries and with their own research topics. But I think the only thing that unites us is the concept of the community of a shared future for all humanity. In addition, it wasn't actually the first time for me to collaborate with the Venezuelan Center on Chinese Studies. Granted, my friend Aymara Gerdo is the director of that center, and since its foundation in 2019, we have kept our friendship. We have always been in touch, and I still remember that in 2022, Aymara invited me and asked me if I wanted to participate in the writing of this book. I would have accepted it very happily, because I believed that at that time the topic was very much in line with my research topic. Then I accepted it very gladly, as I said, and I think it would be a very good bond and bridge of friendship between us, so we can form an academic community between the two countries. And I guess that would be for all the other participants as well. And so we would all agree on participating in the writing of this book. This year coincided with the 50th anniversary of the diplomatic relations between China and Venezuela. It is expected that China and Venezuela can reach more achievements in establishing different exchanges, particularly cultural and interpersonal exchanges, and this book publication, which is a joint commitment of the different communities. So I think it is very fruitful for both of us to have more ties in the future, and thus strengthen trust and friendship between the different academic communities of the two countries. So I think I always have that willingness to be a messenger of friendship for both nations, or for the Spanish-speaking countries and China, contributing with a modest effort for both of them.
In other news, the Cuban government unveiled to the public 3 new bills on citizenship, foreigners, and immigration, which update the relevant regulations and propose significant changes in some aspects of the lives of residents on the island and Cubans abroad. As explained this week by the head of Identification, Immigration, and Alien Affairs of the Cuban Ministry of the Interior, Mario Méndez Mayedo, the new policies seek to guarantee an orderly and safe migration and a greater inclusion of Cuban migrants in the country's economic dynamics. Among the most significant aspects of one of the bills, the migration law, are the elimination of the 24-month maximum limit of stay abroad, the non-loss of property left in Cuba, and the redefinition of the concept of migrants for Cuban citizens. We go now to Argentina, where the Federal Oral Court 6 began to charge on Wednesday the 3 accused of having tried to kill Cristina Kirchner in September of 2022. In the dock are sitting Fernando Sabac Montiel, the attacker who pointed a gun at the head of the then vice president, and Brenda Uliarte, his ex-girlfriend, both accused of being co-perpetrators of attempted murder, doubly qualified by malice and premeditated competition of 2 or more people aggravated by the use of a firearm. However, the prosecution announced that it will also seek to apply the aggravating circumstance of gender violence. Nicolás Carrizo, the boss of both and indicated as a secondary participant, is also involved. We stay in Argentina as investigations continue in the Loan case, 14 days after the disappearance of the minor. The case of the disappearance of the 5-year-old child, Loan Danilo Peña, who disappeared on June 13th in the province of Corrientes, was handed over to the federal justice system on Tuesday, considering the hypothesis of a possible kidnapping linked to human trafficking. Antonio Benitez Luan's uncle is the main focus of attention since he took Luan to pick oranges allegedly on the day of his disappearance without his father's authorization. Carlos Perez, a retired Navy captain, and Maria Victoria Cayllava, a former municipal official, are accused of the disappearance as material co-perpetrators of the crime. The investigation into the case of Luan Peña's disappearance is currently under the direction of Federal Judge Cristina Poserpenso and the Prosecutor's Office for Human Trafficking and Exploitation. We have a financial break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Iran on Thursday from 8 a.m. local time, the electoral silence is ruling as the period of reflection begins ahead of the early presidential elections that will be held on Friday. This way, the electoral silence purpose is that the electorate can reflect in peace as the candidates suspended their campaigns and all publicity activities. Meanwhile, 61 million Iranians have been called to the polls to elect the 14th president. In this regard, the supreme leader Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei called on the people to express their political will at the ballot box, citing the high voter turnout in the country where voting is voluntary. We now move on to other topics. Syria denounces United States and allies' actions that place Israel above international law. On Wednesday, the permanent representative of Syria to the United Nations, Ambassador Qusay al-Dahak, warned that the United States and its allies put the interest of Israel above international law and the purposes of the UN Charter. Following this line, al-Dahak stressed that the criminal actions that Israel perpetrates consecutively against Gaza expose the hypocrisy of Western countries. In addition, the Syrian representative questioned the political, monetary, and military support provided by these countries to the Israeli Defense Forces, as well as the time given to the alleged claims of Zionist forces to attack the territories of the region. In Gaza, Israeli shelling on the Jabalia camp have left at least 8 dead. Palestinian authorities reported on Wednesday a bombing by the Israeli occupation forces in the Jabalia refugee camp in the north of the Gaza Strip, where in addition to the 8 dead, several people were wounded. Since Israel's attacks began, more than 37,000 Palestinians have been killed and more than 86,000 have been wounded. In addition, at least 10,000 people are reported missing, presumably under the rubble, resulting from the bombing. Palestinian and international organizations claim that most of those injured and killed are women and children. And on this topic, the United Nations assured that the planet faces alarming rates of violence against children in conflicts. The report prepared by the experts of the organism reiterates that the current situation is only comparable to the years of the Second World War. The UN Security Council has been convened to analyze the extreme situation in Palestine, along with Myanmar, Somalia, Nigeria, and Sudan, which are the countries with the worst indicators after analyzing the level of suffering of minors in the nation's conflicts. In this sense, the representative of the UN Secretary General for Children in Armed Conflicts, Virginia Gamba, said that children have suffered a flagrant disregard for their rights and protections.
وعمرنا اللي قدرنا عليه ونسكن حاليا في الغرفة هذه 18 نفر احنا افراد اسرتنا اولادي مع احفادي بنسكن. احنا الحين معتمدين اعتماد كلي.
We now move on to other topics. The new development bank of the Economic Alliance BRICS announced on Wednesday its plan to abandon completely the US dollar in the next 3 years. To that end, the BRICS will contemplate an integration plan with local currencies to be driven by the project of independent payment system that could be presented this year. According to some sources, Saudi Arabia could also abandon the dollar in oil trade and liquidate transactions in yuan, a measure that would bring huge losses to the currency as China buys more than 20% of the country's oil exports. The BRICS are interested in the prevalence of international justice, while the West seeks in all ways to stop the multilateralization of the international community to prolong its hegemony. Let's go now to the world of sports, in this case to the Copa America USA 2024. As on Wednesday, Ecuador beat Jamaica 3-1 at the Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. The tricolor team obtained its first victory in the Continental Championship, scored 3 points and took second place in the series standing. Meanwhile, Jamaica is only one in its group with 0 points, reducing its chances of survival. Ecuador will face Mexico in the last group stage match on Sunday, and so will Jamaica with Venezuela. Both matches will define the future of the game for every team. We continue on topic of the American tournament, where the Venezuelan national team defeated the Mexican team 1-0 on Wednesday in a new day of Group B in California. The team striker Rondon classified the match as very complicated, but they were able to counter Mexico with their strength. With this victory, Venezuela secured its place in its quarterfinals of the tournament, a stage it had not contested since the Brazil 2019 Cup. The team known as La Vinotinto leads Group B of the Copa America this year with 6 points from 2 outings. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.
For me, teleSUR is an example